Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to discuss about multi-cloud and hybrid cloud architecture. In our previous video, either we discussed something about that, like we discuss about multi-cloud, we discuss about hybrid cloud, but in short, okay. So we will discuss and also discuss about vendor lock-in and redundancy in our previous video. So now in this session, we are going to discuss about multi-cloud and hybrid cloud architecture in detail. So understanding the architecture difference between the multi-cloud and hybrid cloud strategy is crucial for choosing the right model for your organization needs. So these are the two strategies, sorry, used by organization to deploy and manage the cloud environment. But they serve the different purpose and the different characteristics. So to understanding that difference, where we choose the multi-cloud and where we choose the hybrid cloud architecture. So let's start. What is it? If we talk about the hybrid cloud, just for the reason, combining private cloud or on-prem infrastructure with any public cloud provider. That is a hybrid. And multi-cloud means use multiple public cloud services from different providers. Like we are taking EC2 in our AWS, storage in Azure or GCP or some other services where that totally depend on the costing, availability, what type of service we want and which particular cloud provider is providing us that. Then the integration. Integrated system with orchestration between environments. And in multiple clouds, typically isolated environment. No tightly integrated, not tightly integrated. Because AWS have its own protocols on designing. Azure have its own protocols sometimes. It's on system. So sometimes integration become little difficult. It's not tightly integrated sometimes. Okay. So this is one thing. Architecture example in hybrid, an enterprise run sensitive workload on the private data center and AWS use scalable compute. And multi-cloud, an enterprise use AWS data storage, Azure for the machine learning, and Google for the big data analytics. Here we are in private, in hybrid, private data for sensitive workloads, sensitive data, sensitive information, and computing we are using with the help of AWS. In multi-cloud, one we are using the AWS, we are also using the Azure for machine learning, and one for the big data analytics, we are using the Google Cloud. In this way, we can design our data centers. We can design our cloud environment where we are getting the better services at better price. In multi-cloud, we can choose that. So these are architecture examples that you can decide. Use case. In case of hybrid, regulatory compliances. There are some compliances. I want to keep my data my on-prem. I don't want to share my data with anywhere else. In that case, we choose the hybrid cloud. I will keep my entire data in my on-prem data center, compute power, and another services we take from the cloud provider. Less focused on regulatory locality, because that depends on the service we are taking, from where that provider is providing us a service. In cloud, where which availability zone we are choosing, which area we are choosing, which region we are choosing. That depend on the that particular provider. Cost optimization, run workload on cost effective tier and choose in multi-cloud, choose cost efficient provider per service. Where we are getting the cost effective service from different providers, we choose that particular provider. Avoid vendor lock-in tied to the private infra and one public cloud. Now we are tied to one our private infra also. Vendor lock-in is little bit more and just coupled with one public cloud provider. Avoid dependency on a single vendor. Vendor lock-in risk is less here in multi-cloud. Disaster recovery and redundancy. Can use cloud for disaster recovery. Enable cross-cloud disaster recovery strategies. It's a good feature. So for disaster recovery and redundancy, multi-cloud is better. We can take the backup of one vendor to another vendor. We have some data, some services on X provider. We can take the backup on Y provider. And whatever the services we are using on Y provider, we can take the backup on X provider. So this is the key use cases. Okay. So these are the things, examples like in hybrid. Hospital that store the patient data on-prem but run diagnostic on Azure, AI diagnostic on Azure. Application is running on Azure, but still data is on-prem. They're not sharing the patient data to some cloud provider. That is an example of hybrid where we prefer, or some financial organization, or some security agencies like banks in financial, security agencies that don't want to share their data somewhere else, don't want to store data somewhere else. So multi-cloud startup using GCP BigQuery for analytics, AWS Lambda for compute function. Nothing is secret that we cannot share. We are running the different services on different providers. So these are the example of use case. If we talk about the security and management of all these things, security complex due to mix public and private. Because I have my own protocols in my own data center. Sometimes it becomes more difficult or complex to secure all that. Here also complex because different provider here. Each provider have its own protocol, each provider have its own algorithms to work out. So complex in both cases. Security is complex. In management, require integration tools like VPN. Purpose of VPN, secure communication virtual private network, as we have already discussed, to establish a secure connection from on-prem to cloud data center. So whatever data is traveling, like data on transit, should be secure. So we require an integration tool of VPN. And management, each provider naturally have its own management platform. Each provider has its own management platform. So we need to understand all that things. When we talk about the security, that is complex in both cases, and management. For clear, multi-cloud architecture, we already discussed. Let's have some fast review on that, all that thing. Two or more public providers like AWS, Azure, or GCP to run your workload. Typically to increase the availability, avoid vendor lock-in, and optimize the services. Sorry. That is a multi-cloud architecture. Characteristics: each cloud run different workloads or part of an application. Like with the help of containers, we can put some applications on Azure, we can put some containers on Azure, and some part of that application on the AWS. No direct integration between the private infrastructure and cloud. We use cloud and a logistic tool for orchestration and automation. So this is the architecture characteristics. This is the components, like one is a public cloud, both are the public cloud, common CI/CD monitoring IAM tool we can use for that collaboration. Use case: redundancy across the provider, geo distributed services. One service I am using in another region, in another place, and one I am using in India, one I am using in US. So to reduce the latency of that, one application part that we are using in USA, we can upload that on the AWS US region. And one application that I'm running in India, that we can upload our local region, like Bombay region in India or Hyderabad region in India. And next, the cost optimization. We use this, we are getting the better cost of that service. Because service cost vary with different regions. Uh, okay, cost vary. If same storage we are using in US region, same storage we are using in India region, cost will be different. Same EC2 we are using in US region and we are using in India, the cost will be different. There is a cost difference. You can check the costing on the Google. What are the current cost they are charging in India? What the cost they are charging for the same service in US? Now we talk about the hybrid architecture. Combine the private infrastructure on-prem, and that can be a private cloud with one or more public clouds, allowing data and app to move between them. Data is like my on-prem or my private cloud, and apps I have installed in cloud. So when app requires some data, can come to my on-prem data center and take the data from there. Architect characteristics: tight integration between on-prem and cloud. Okay, there's a tight integration between my data center, database that I'm keeping there, that I don't want to share with the public cloud. I don't want to store there. shared networking, identity, and data layer. Identity, like I have already one older data centers. Now I go with the cloud. So I have thousands of identities here, thousands of millions of users already here. So when we move to the cloud, I start the application using here. I need to create the entire database here. No, I can use all these ID and passwords saved here to log in here with the help of known as federated services. Federated services. Just type again. Federated services. For example, sometimes when we create the account or try to log in or try to create the account with any of the internet service or internet thing. So it log in with the Google, log in with the LinkedIn, log in with Facebook. We got the option there. So we are having faith on Google that provider is saying from where you want to start the service and log in with the Google. We have faith on that. That is actually the federated services between them, trust services between them. You log in with your Google account, you can use our services. So that's why it's a shared networking, shared identity and data lake. Often support cloud bursting, overflowing the workload to cloud. I have some servers running some applications. If overload is there, workload is going overflow, then we can create like auto scaling can be done on the cloud. Rather than immediately setting up the new servers in my own data center, we can go to the cloud for that. So this is the architecture characteristics. Key component. One is the on-prem data center or private cloud. One is the public cloud that can be Azure, that can be AWS, that can be GCP. Then connectivity between them from my on-prem to cloud provider, connectivity between VPN via VPN or direct connect option. And management, unified management and security. These are the key components. One, my on-prem data center, one component. Second is the public cloud where we want to set up our services. Then connectivity between them using the VPN or direct connect. And then management and security between. Use case, regulatory compliance, keep data on-prem. I want, according to the compliances, regulatory compliances, I don't want to share or save the data somewhere outside. Second most beautiful thing is the gradual cloud migration. Gradually, rather than using my on-prem and suddenly it's not possible to move there on the cloud. It takes some time. So one by one, gradually we are migrating all the services to the cloud from my own data center. That is also beautiful point. A very good point. When sudden move, gradually keep moving there. Gradually keep migrating there. And in some cases, we have some legacy applications. Legacy system integration. That is a use case of this thing. Hybrid cloud. Okay. This is the comparison table we already done many times. For fast review, multiple cloud, multiple public cloud, hybrid, mix of private and public environment. Connectivity loosely coupled because every vendor have its own algorithm. Hybrid tightly integrated. Workload placement across public clouds, flexible between on-prem and cloud, where we want to save and where we want to share. Redundancy, vendor choice, and performance. Our case focus. Compliance, legacy support, and flexibility. Examples AWS, any apps in AWS, database in GCP, and ERP on-prem, analytics on cloud. So in this we can divide the load in hybrid cloud. And same in multiple cloud also, we can choose. Like apps are running, like my web server is running here in AWS. Database is there in the GCP. So when an application require, user want to access here, application require can communicate with the database, can take the back and can query the, reply the customer. This is the comparison. So here I have already discussed multiple, one cloud provider, another public cloud provider, and can use the app here. In private infrastructure, one is the private in public cloud infrastructure via using VPN direct connect the public cloud A. So this is the hybrid cloud environment. So this is all about public cloud and hybrid cloud that we discussed today. What are the different use cases? What is the architecture characteristics? What are the key components of both of these? So in next, we will discuss about cloud to on-prem integration. So thank you very much. See you in the next.